After several years of defunding the police and passing several different laws to tie the hands of law enforcement officers in Washington state, the Democrats are back with a new proposal that would give $100 million in grant funding for hiring of new law enforcement officers. Now, is this about public safety or is this yet another woke agenda from the Washington state Democrats? Today, we're going to dig in. I'll give you all the details and I'll tell you how you can take action. Hey, everybody, I'm Julie Barrett, founder of Conservative Ladies of America, and I am back with another bill of the day. We are back in Washington state with House Bill 2015. This bill passed out of the House before cutoff along party lines. There were actually a couple of Democrats who voted no, along with the Republicans. However, I suspect that they voted no for very different reasons than why the Republicans voted no. On the surface, this sounds like a great bill, $100 million in grants to hire new law enforcement officers. With Washington state ranking dead last in the country for police per capita, there's definitely a need to hire new law enforcement officers and to recruit them and entice them into doing this job in Washington state. The Columbian newspaper even ran an article on March 11th saying that Bob Ferguson's police funding plan deserves our support. They say it's a shift from the old climate and fuel taxes of the Inslee administration. Well, it does add a new tax, but it's also full of woke ideology being pushed onto law enforcement officers. The bill is titled An Act Relating to Improving Public Safety Funding by Providing Resources to Local Governments and State and Local Criminal Justice Agencies and Authorizing a Local Tax Option. So, what do these law enforcement agencies have to do to be approved to receive a grant? Well, 25% of their law enforcement force needs to complete a 40-hour crisis intervention training. Then 100% of their officers have to undergo trauma-informed and gender-based violence training. So think like domestic violence, but there's also, in accordance with like these hate crime laws and things like that, you have a lot of anti-discrimination and LGBTQ and people claiming that they are victims of gender-based violence. So these are the kinds of training that they would be required to take in order to be approved for these grants. In addition to those, they would have to take mandatory de-escalation and use of force training in accordance with the policies set forward by the Attorney General's office. Now, who was the Attorney General for the last 12 years? Oh, that's right, Governor Bob Ferguson. So all of these trainings would be in alignment with the policies that Bob Ferguson implemented through the Attorney General's office. The bill also requires anti-discrimination training and in alignment with the Keep Washington Working Act. Now, the Keep Washington Working Act is something that Bob Ferguson and Jay Inslee came up with during the first Trump administration, and Bob Ferguson has kind of brought it back to life in, I think it was January or February. And this is about basically protections for illegal immigrants. And so the officers would have to be trained along the guidelines of the Keep Washington Working Act so that they are handling illegal immigrants in accordance with Washington's policies set forward by the Ferguson administration. Now, most of these trainings that the officers would have to get, this gender-based violence training, the non-discrimination training, all of this is very heavy DEI training stuff. They're going to be pushing woke ideology onto the law enforcement officers. Now, let's talk about how this bill is funded. Cities and counties would be able to tack on a 0.1% sales tax, but they can only do that if they are approved for the grant funding. So their officers would have to go through all of this training. They would have to be in compliance with all the trainings, the mandatory trainings, in order to be able to pass on this tax in their cities and counties. What's interesting about this is that Bob Ferguson is threatening to veto any budget that does not have this $100 million grant funding in it for law enforcement. So that tells you that this policy is something that is, in fact, going to pass. And it's pretty interesting because there's another bill that passed passed out of the Senate recently with unanimous support. It's Senate Bill 5068. And what this bill does is it allows Washington state to hire non citizens to be law enforcement officers, firefighters, and even prosecutors. So if you pair these bills together, which I always say legislation is like a web, no one bill usually stands on its own. So if we pair this bill together, we're going to be hiring non citizens and they're going to be taking the woke ideological trainings, and then they're going to be enforcing laws on you, the citizen. So House Bill 2015 is a very bad bill. It doesn't yet have a hearing scheduled in the Senate Law and Justice Committee, but I imagine that that will be happening any day. Could happen next week. That schedule's not out yet. But I've got a link in the description below where you can go read the bill for yourself, and you can also send a comment to your state senator and let them know how you feel about this bill. Now, unfortunately, with Washington state and the Democrats having almost a supermajority, they pass whatever they want to pass. So this is going to pass. But like I always say, if you have the opportunity to use your voice, you have an obligation to do so. So please do take action and make your voice heard. Please also share this video with other citizens who need to know what's going on, because this is most definitely going to become law in Washington state. And it's really important that citizens are aware of what's going on. If you're interested in learning more about Senate Bill 5068, I've got a couple other videos that I will link down below for you if you want to go check those out as well. Sorry, I don't have a better news. Would love to hear what you think of these policies. I would love to hear your thoughts on these policies. So please do leave a comment below. If you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.